Back here on the Westmoreland Sports Network with our final guest of the evening, head coach of the Seton University Griffins, Brian Tucker. Coach, thank you so much and welcome to our show tonight.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Coach, a little bit of a disheartening start to a season that's not going to be. Let's just call the elephant out in the room. Talk a little bit about your season being canceled this year.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably almost a month ago now that the PSAC made the announcement and Seton Hill made the announcement. But the thing we have to remember, too, is Seton Hill was in-person education all semester. They went out on a limb compared to a lot of other universities. It was very successful, and that's our main priority at Seton Hill. And at the end of the day, that's why the guys are there, and we have to take a look at it and know that that's the university's main priority. So whether we agree or disagree with the decision doesn't matter. The education comes first, and that's what these guys had to cope with and understand as they went through a loss, a severe loss of not having this season, of having that taken away from them.
I mean, I know it's kind of an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How did the guys take the news? You know, you train all year for perhaps your senior year, your last year, and that's not going to be a thing. Are they going to be able to perhaps come back next year?
Yeah, so we talked about it as a program, and obviously it was not the outcome we had hoped for. The idea behind it was that you guys are going to go through kind of your 5 stages of grief, right? And we had to understand that was going to happen. And once they kind of got through that process, then it was on to the next step of we need to figure out what's next. For some of you guys, it's going to be simple. It's next semester. We get back to working and training. We get back to worrying about our schoolwork and education. Some of these other guys have bigger decisions to make, whether it may be a master's program, whether they're moving on with their lives and their careers, and then how to do that. So we also meet NCAA regulations, Seton Hill regulations, financial scholarships. You know, we're not a fully funded program by any means. So making sure that we hit all those categories, it ends up kind of being individually based, but that's kind of the phase we're at right now, is figuring out what each individual needs to make sure that they have a plan going forward.
Which is what wrestling is. I mean, it's that individuality in a team sport, so it's just off the mat work for you now, Coach, and a very unselfish response. I expected nothing less, but, you know, you just have to accept what it is, and, you know, let's just be grateful for that day and move on. At the end of the day, as you said, you hit the nail right on the head. It's about the education that they're getting, and they are getting it. George?
So, Coach, talk a little bit about how as a coach are you helping your athletes kind of cope with the fact that they're not going to have a season, right? Because, you know, like an athlete, be it any sport, right? I mean, you're a student athlete, especially at the collegiate level. I mean, in wrestling-wise, I mean, that's a big portion of your time, your focus, you know. How are you helping your student athletes navigate through this? Because it's like, now I don't have a wrestling season, so not like what? Now what?
Yeah, so right now I kind of made them get away from it, to be honest. There's been a few that I've touched base with since Thanksgiving break, but those were the ones that kind of are in a more serious situation. The rest of them are on my list to get in touch with, but I wanted them to kind of get away. I wanted them to enjoy their family time first. Mm-hmm. I think one thing this pandemic has done for all of us is really make us evaluate ourselves, and I kind of want them to go through that process as well and understand that wrestling's what we do, it's not who we are. And I think that's going to be the process that is going to be tough for them to realize, because again, like you said, they put so much into it. Mm-hmm. But this decision is not going to be the first disappointment. It's not the first disappointment in their lives. It's not going to be the last. So they need to understand that for how much wrestling's a part of their lives, like, it's a part of it. So they have to get right with some of the other areas and focus on themselves, pick up a different hobby, find internships, you know, work for different things that are going to set them up after wrestling. But I think that's a great question, and it's going to be a road that's never been traveled before, and it's going to be something that we have to figure out as we go.
Now, do you think that this is kind of similar to when, like, I think of when I wrestled in college, you know, after that national tournament, right? I mean, your kind of collegiate season's over, right? Especially your senior year. You finish up at the national tournament, then your season's over. So then it's like, now what? I mean, obviously now, wrestlers are going on their training to try to make a world team or Olympic team, but is it almost kind of like the same mind space though for some of your athletes now? It's kind of like, well, now what?
Yeah, I think they get to experience that earlier, in a sense of when you graduate, you have to find that identity, right? You feel like you've lost an identity, and I think they need to understand that now. And that's one thing we try to go over a lot. Again, I go back to saying wrestling's what we do, it's not who we are. So they need to find that first right now, and hopefully the situation forces them into finding that. And my thought as a coach is that should make them more successful wrestling-wise, because they're able to understand where it fits in their lives and where it fits in their priorities, and still focus on getting better, but also understand it's not who they are.
Have you been provided any clarity on what happens now when it comes to eligibility now?
Yeah, so the NCAA did give a blanket waiver, so any student athlete in winter sports is eligible for another year. So nobody lost a year of eligibility on the Seton Hill program. Again, it goes back to more logistics in terms of what classes they're going to take, what degrees they're going to go after, financial decisions, again, because that changes things from
Does
both
their aid carry over then too, or is that a whole nother dynamic?
So a whole nother dynamic.
Okay.
So it is going to be, like I said, it's going to be individual based. Yeah, it's going to make some tough decisions for myself and them personally in the future. Because you have to
recruit the next class, who you were expecting some kids, they graduate, that aid frees up, and then you can provide that to an incoming freshman. So even though they're giving them that blanket year, it's really kind of muddies the waters as far as how I'm going to recruit really attractive wrestlers who are going to fit our program.
It does, but it at least, at the very least, it gives them the decision, right? And that was when we were waiting to hear whether that blanket waiver was going through or not. That was my biggest concern. Was I want them to have the decision. I don't want the NCAA to dictate whether they come back for another year or not. I want it to fall on them. So they do have that decision, and again, the next few months are going to be some roads that aren't traveled before, and we're going to figure that out together. And hope that, again, at the end of the day, we're still trying to make the right decisions for not only them as individuals, but then us as a program.
Are you seeing other conferences also shutting down in Division II across the country, Coach?
So right now we have not yet. There are individual universities that have kind of shut down, but we haven't seen any full conferences yet. But like we've seen with this in general, it changes day to day, even hour to hour.
Sure.
So what the future holds, I'm not 100%.
Okay. Coach, away from wrestling, obviously 2020 has been a challenge. You've been away from wrestling quite a bit. Tell us about Coach Tucker outside of the mat room. We want our viewers to get to know you as a person.
Yeah, so the 2020 gave an interesting year, but one thing I set my mind to, and actually I completed the Army 10 miler. It was a virtual race in October.
Nice, congratulations.
Thanks. So did that. And then I hang out with my girlfriend and my stepkids all the time, and they're competing in gymnastics and hockey and soccer. So luckily they've been able to compete in those recently so far this year. So we've had some exciting times watching the Greensburg-Salem hockey teams or middle school soccer teams. So besides that, we have our 3 dogs at home too, and they keep me busy. Everybody keeps me busy with that.
Nice.
So
How's Parker doing?
She's doing well. She's got 2 little brothers now, wiener dogs. So
nice. Now, do you still live up by my brother Justin?
I am by your brother.
Okay.
Yep. So we saw him over, real quick at Halloween as we were trying to,
navigate that street of craziness.
Trick-or-treating and all that.
You want to see a street that does it right for Halloween. This place gets insane where they live. It's, I don't know, maybe 60 houses on a street, but these people go all out for Halloween. I mean, they have like a haunted gauntlet they create at the end of the block. It's really neat.
And normally we do. This year was obviously a little different. But yeah, it's a fun time. But like I said, Kim and Dylan, Lauren, Caitlin, they're keeping me busy. So I appreciate it.
You're filling that void of not having wrestling through family, and that's good.
And then obviously I'm still working out. I I'm completing my MBA at Seton Hill as well, so getting a second master's.
Good for you.
So I've tried to make the best of it, for myself, keeping busy still, and then obviously wrestling's still the number one priority.
Can't keep a wrestler down. You just find the next thing to do.
Yeah, right.
That's true.
Good for you. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I mean, obviously, we're all sorry that you're not going to be able to compete, but, God willing, you'll be back on the mat with the Griffins next season, and we'll be there to cover all those matches.
Yeah, thank you, guys, and big thanks to Westmoreland Sports Network for putting this on. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure. That's head coach Brian Tucker of the Seton Hill University Griffins right in Greensburg. When we return right here on the Westmoreland Sports Network, we will have our wrap-up of our third annual Westmoreland County Wrestling Kickoff show right here on the Westmoreland Sports Network.